This is Campus Lore Live, where NFL players are the experts on college football. I'm your host, Drew Butler, joined alongside Aaron Murray. And on this week's episode, we are joined by NFL Pro Bowl tight end and Notre Dame alumni from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Tyler Eifert. Later on in the show, obviously, a huge matchup, a rematch of Notre Dame and Clemson coming up this weekend in the ACC Championship Game. Aaron, let's start in the ACC. Dabo Swinney, head coach of the Clemson football team, has been running his mouth all year long, and Clemson's been taking care of business for the most part, but he had shots fired over at Ohio State. Aaron, Ohio State is positioned to make the college football playoff. They've only played 5 games. The Big Ten just reversed a ruling and essentially made it so that Ohio State could play in the Big Ten championship this weekend. What are your thoughts? Does Dabo have a point? Ohio State's only played 5 games.
First off, with Dabo, I think Dabo just needs to take a break with some of the comments he's made this season. I mean, go back to Florida State weekend. Now this is like, Dabo, just coach Clemson. Focus on the game you got versus Notre Dame this weekend. Win that one, and then get in the playoffs yourself. I just think he's being a little bit too political this season right now. Less political, more coaching, I think would benefit him and his football team there at Clemson. I love the coach. He's tremendous. All the respect in the world from him. Just like I said, just focus on coaching. But overall, listen, the Big Ten did what was best for the Big Ten. You can't fault them for that. I mean, look at the ACC, for goodness sakes. They eliminated the last season game for both Notre Dame and Clemson to give those guys a week off before heading into the ACC Championship Game. They did what was best for 2 of their teams in the ACC. So you can't get mad at the Big Ten for allowing Ohio State to get in there because, they know that Ohio State is their best chance to make it into the playoffs. So at the end of the day, yes, I would love to see teams with more games played, more what the committee says data points, give a better shot to get into the playoffs. But Ohio State does pass the eyeball test. They got Fields, they got Olave, they got talent on that team. They look like a team that could compete with Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame at the end of the day. It's just like we'll say it over and over again, it's a unique season this year. It really is. I would have loved to see Cincinnati get in there at the end of the day. They're not going to. The committee made that obvious last week and then moving them back. So with Florida losing, I'm still not 100% sold on A&M. I do think if Ohio State wins this weekend, I would still put them in there at the number 4 spot.
Yeah, Dabo keeps running his mouth. He simply said if he were on the committee, he would value a 1-loss or maybe even a 2-loss team that has played 10 or 11 games. Keep in mind, the Big Ten made the decision to start in late October. They could have done what the ACC did. They could have done what the SEC did. You wouldn't have this predicament. And if we learned anything this past weekend is that you can't take easy weeks for granted. And that's exactly what Florida did. I think that's what Dabo's point was. So what did Florida do? Well, they lost to LSU. LSU, of course, has had a ton of attrition this season. They lost 37-34, Aaron. Florida was on the outside looking in for a little college football playoff spot. Of course, they're going to take on Alabama this weekend in the SEC Championship Game, but they blew it. A horrible personal foul and sportsmanlike conduct with the shoe that kept LSU's drives going. LSU makes a 57-yarder. Florida misses a 49-yard field goal to tie the game up to send it into overtime. And now the SEC Championship looks much, much different. Doesn't seem like Florida has a chance to get into the college football playoff, even if they do beat Alabama. So what's the story here? Has LSU gotten better throughout the season, or was Florida just exposed? We've seen them show some weakness throughout this season.
Florida defensively has been atrocious all season long. And people are saying, oh, they got better. Look at what they did versus Kentucky. Watch the film. Kentucky ran right through them in that first half. Second half, yes, they stepped up, did a little bit better job. Tennessee had their moments, and Tennessee's not a very good football team as we've seen this season. They are not good defensively. You look at LSU, Max Johnson making his first start as a freshman for LSU, the 3rd-string quarterback heading into the season. All of their receivers for LSU have pretty much opted out this season. They're a skeleton crew offensively. And then defensively, LSU has not been very good this entire season at all as well. So you're at home. Maybe you got caught looking ahead a little bit. I don't know. You rested Kyle Pitts. He didn't play. Maybe you're trying to say, hey, listen, we don't need him. We're going to be fine. I'm sure they're regretting not playing Kyle Pitts right now in the football game. They just came out with lack of energy. Kyle Trask, too many turnovers. One of those interceptions was absolutely nuts. Bounced off one defender. Another defender was out of bounds. He got back in bounds, caught it. the Shoegate incident, launching a shoe, Marco Wilson. I mean, what are you thinking? I mean, at the end of the day, it frustrates me. Dan Mullen's comments after the game and then his comments 2 days later about somewhat defending his players with throwing the shoe. You need to take control of your team. You need to make sure that you're telling them both in person and private, you can't do this. And then you have to tell them in public too, you can't do this kind of thing. You don't see Clemson making these mistakes. You don't see Alabama making these mistakes. You don't see Notre Dame. If you want to be elite and if you want a chance to be in the playoffs, you can't be making stupid bonehead decisions like Marco Wilson did in that football game, costing his team a chance to make the playoffs. I don't know. At the end of the day, did Florida have a chance to beat Alabama? I don't think so. I think Alabama waxes everyone in the conference and in the country right now. But at least you gave yourself a little bit of hope. You gave themselves an opportunity to focus just on Alabama. Now, all of a sudden, all week long, it's talking about Marco Wilson. It's talking about losing to LSU. It's talking about why didn't Kyle Pitts play. It's too many distractions on a week where you need to focus on Alabama and the SEC Championship game. It is going to bite them in the butt this weekend versus the Crimson Tide.
Everything on the line. A college football playoff opportunity. Heisman legitimacy with Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts. Shoegate, penalties. What a terrible loss for Florida. One that people will be talking about for a long, long time. What about LSU? Orgeron, Bo Pelini on the defensive side. Have these guys silenced the critics, or will the defensive change be made in the offseason and Coach O right those off-field problems?
Well, I think Coach O's fine. I think he earned a lot of love and respect for the season they had last year. I think it's Bo Pelini. I just don't know. When you look at LSU, we're so accustomed to defense, and then obviously last season the offense overshadowed it with the quarterback play, the receivers, Clyde Edwards at running back. I mean, that was a special offense. So we're like, okay, fine. Defense took the year off. It's okay. Bo Pelini comes in there, and the defense has been pretty tough to watch, honestly. And then honestly, defenses across the SEC have not been their best this season. Alabama's gone better. Georgia at times has looked really elite. I think Bo Pelini has to go, honestly. I mean, there's too much talent on that defense to be giving up the points that they've been giving up week in and week out. So as I said, Coach O, you're fine. You got some love. You bought yourself a few years there with the national championship. Bo Pelini, I think there has to be some kind of change made on that side of the football.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And as we are already seeing, the coaching carousel is underway. After the break, we're going to talk about that. Auburn let go of Gus Malzahn. And what about USC out west? Any chance that the Pac-12 could sneak into the college football playoff? We'll talk about it right after the break. We are back, CampusLore Live, Drew Butler and Aaron Murray. Aaron, I can't believe it's conference championship week, and so much happened on the field this past weekend that's setting us up for an amazing slate of action coming up on Saturday. But what's happening off the field is just as important. Let's start in the SEC. Auburn on Sunday afternoon announced that they are firing head coach Gus Malzahn. I was shocked. I was surprised. I thought Gus was going to get another year. I thought maybe some other SEC teams would make the move instead, but Auburn gets into the mix. Let's go of Gus Malzahn. They are in the coaching carousel. Are you surprised? What are you hearing about some potential candidates?
Honestly, this is, to me, one of the worst decisions I've seen. Unless you get Hugh Freeze, I just don't get it. I mean, you're paying the guy now $21 million. He'll get $10 million this year in the next 30 days. He'll get another $10 to $11 million split up over the next 4 seasons. You're going to pay someone $21 million during this crazy pandemic year where loss of revenue from fans, TV, everything. And who are you going to replace him with? Like I said, unless it's Hugh Freeze, unless you have a plan that you know you're going to go get that guy, who are you going to bring in that's A, better than Gus, and B, deserving of that $21 million that you're going to have to shell out to Gus over the next 4 seasons? So is it Kevin Steele? I've heard lots of wrong with Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele was 1-31 as the head coach of Baylor. So you're going to bring in that guy who you think is better than Gus and deserves $21 million? You're crazy. Mario Cristobal, like him, great recruiter. Is he better and deserving of $21 million? No. I think this is one of the worst decisions I've seen. I don't know who's pulling the strings there, what booster is shelling out the money to make this happen. I think it is crazy. I think Gus is a fine head coach. He's had success. I mean, shoot, they won the Iron Bowl last year, for goodness sakes. Crazy year. You're losing revenue. I think this is an awful decision for Auburn.
Yeah, keep in mind, Gus Malzahn had success against Nick Saban. It's not like he beat him every year, but certainly Auburn was able to win a few games in the Iron Bowl most recently just a year ago. The timing of this is suspect, Aaron, and I agree with you. If you make this decision when they did, it seems like they've got somebody in mind. Hugh Freeze seemingly is the best fit to take advantage of Auburn's current roster. If it is Kevin Steele, the head coach, the defensive coordinator right now, why would you do it 3 days before National Signing Day? I don't know, but this storyline is going to be one that we will certainly keep our eyes on. Staying off the field, Central Florida's former quarterback, McKensie Milton, of course, had entered the transfer portal, and he's found a new home, Aaron. He's heading to Florida State to play for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles. Just a few weeks ago, on this very program, you boldly said that you're looking forward to see what Florida State can do in 2021. I scratched my head at the time, but now it makes more sense. It seems like Mike Norvell might have his quarterback.
Well, it's because, Drew, I had some insider, little fairies telling me that McKenzie Milton was going to transfer to FSU. No, I'm kidding. But, listen, this is big for FSU, depending on how healthy McKenzie Milton really is to go out there and play football. There's one thing to be cleared. We talked about that with JT Daniels and the Georgia Bulldogs. Yes, he was cleared to start the season. But coming back from an injury like that, you have to mentally tell yourself, I can go out there, I can step into throws, I can take a hit from an offensive line, defensive line rolling into my leg in the pocket. A lot goes into being able to come back from an injury from which McKenzie Milton suffered a few years ago or a couple of years ago. So if he's healthy and if he's playing like he was at UCF, huge get for Florida State. We know they got talent. They're going to bring in some talent here in the next couple of signing classes. You got a quarterback. That's a huge plus, and I love their head coach. I think that listen, it's not going to turn them into one of the top teams in the ACC, but like I said a couple weeks ago, I think they can take a significant jump from year 1 to year 2 under Norvell.
Yeah, it was always fun to watch what Norvell and that Memphis offense could do when they had Brady White and Gainwell. They would put points up on the board and make it fun. If football was fun again in Tallahassee, I think for sure it would be a lot of credit to McKenzie Milton. Let's head out west for just a quick second. USC keeps winning football games. Southern Cal is 5-0, Aaron. They're getting set to play Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game this weekend. How about this? A graphic showed up on ESPN Saturday night, and it was according to the FPI, the Football Power Index. It had the Trojans with a 49% chance to make the college football playoff. If USC wins the Pac-12, do they have a pathway to get into the Final Four?
Yeah, there is. And listen, if you want to compare them to Ohio State, if you want to compare the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, you could honestly make an argument that the Pac-12 this season is a more competitive conference than the Big Ten is right now. Oregon, Stanford, Colorado, UCLA is a pretty darn good football team, which USC just beat in a tremendous game this past week. And this is a good USC team. They got a great quarterback. They got a great talent around them. They're playing well on both sides of the football. So, yes, if they win this weekend and a couple other scenarios happen, which have to happen, I think the first thing is Notre Dame has to beat Clemson. If all these other teams kind of looking from the outside in want a chance to get into the Final Four, first things first, Notre Dame must beat Clemson to knock Clemson out of the playoffs. And obviously it helped too if Northwestern's able to beat Ohio State. Then 2 slots are able to open up for teams like Cincinnati, a team like Georgia, a team like USC. These are all what ifs. Who knows what's going to happen this weekend? But at the end of the day, yes, USC has put themselves in the conversation. Like I said, if they win, Ohio State wins, same record. And possibly, like I said, Pac-12 is, to me, a better conference right now than the Big Ten this season. So why not throw them into the argument?
Oh, who would have thought? Look, I love it. Everybody always assumes you know what's going to happen when conference championship weekend comes around. As Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. We are in for a great slate of action. And we're also in for a great guest. Coming up right after the break, we're going to be joined by Jacksonville Jaguars tight end and former Notre Dame Fighting Irish Tyler Eifert joins the program. Huge matchup in the ACC Championship this weekend with Clemson and Notre Dame, a rematch from the game of the year. Don't go anywhere. We'll be joined by Tyler right after the break. Welcome back into CampusLore Live. Time to bring in our guest this week. He's a special guest, an NFL Pro Bowler. He's a tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Most importantly, a Notre Dame alumni, and a huge weekend ahead for the Fighting Irish as they have a rematch against Clemson in the ACC Championship Game. Tyler, thanks for joining the program, my man. Hey, let's just start with maybe one of the more interesting storylines this week, and it comes from Dabo Swinney, Clemson's head coach, and he's taking some shots at Ohio State. He's saying, I'm not really sure if Ohio State should be in the college football playoff discussion. What are your thoughts? Should teams who have played entire seasons be valued more than one like Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough question because I mean if you watched Ohio State all year, they've looked pretty dominant, but the wear and tear of a full season and playing that many games, every opponent can kind of sneak up on you. You never know which one it's going to be, even when you're a better team, and just being prepared to play and going out there and winning. Even though obviously Ohio State is better than every team in the Big Ten, but just going out there every week in and week out and getting a win, it's hard to do. So it's a tough question.
Hey, I mean, we proved it last weekend with Florida dropping that game at home to LSU. You can't take for granted going out there and proving it week in and week out. You think Notre Dame should think about getting into a conference? It's been fun watching them take on this ACC schedule. It's great for the university, for the fan base to make a conference championship game in your first season. Obviously, tons of storied rivalries across the nation with the likes of USC and Stanford. As an alumni, would you be happy if Notre Dame entered into a conference, or do you like the independence?
I like the independence, partly just because everybody else wants us to get into a conference, and we just have chosen not to, and have the freedom to play, different teams throughout the entire country. And I'm sure there's some money issues involved on why or why not to join a conference and all those types of things. But I don't know. I like being independent.
All right, let's talk about the game this weekend. First question I want to ask is, if Notre Dame loses this game and has one loss against a top-ranked Clemson team, do you think they should still get into the college football playoff?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame, I think they're in no matter what, unless somehow they just get blown out, which I don't think is going to happen. Because sometimes I think, sometimes when you have a conference championship game, like it happens a lot in the SEC with, Bama or Georgia or whoever, and it's their first loss, but that was their first round of the playoffs. If you hadn't played that team before and now that's first time playing and they beat them, so that team is better, they go in. But having already beat Clemson, I think it's a little bit harder if you lose this time to now say that Clemson is better. So I think they get in either way. We can just make it simple and just beat them, though.
That'd be even better. So if that happens, what are the keys to a Notre Dame victory? What do the Fighting Irish have to do to beat Clemson for the second time?
Well, they've ran the ball really well this year. I think Coach Reese has put an emphasis on that. The O-line's played great, and then Ian Book, just watching him progress throughout the years and even this season. He's got a winning attitude, just the guy that just, if things aren't going right, he's just going to find a way to win. And then he's grown into being more dominant, where you're playing a lesser team and you just handle your business and put up a bunch of points. So I think that'll be key. And then obviously the first time we played Clemson, we held ETN to, I forget how many yards, but it wasn't nearly as many as he was averaging. And so slowing him down and trying to contain their explosive offense will be the key.
Yeah, that'll be ideal, no doubt, if Notre Dame wants to have some success. And before we let you go, we're not going to let you off easy. What's your prediction for this weekend? Give me a little score prediction, and is Notre Dame going to take care of business and win an ACC championship?
Yeah, I think they're going to take care of business. It's just a score. I mean, I feel like it's hard. The last game was 40-something in the 40s, and so I think it's hard to win games when they're in the 40s. So I think they got to keep Clemson to something a little bit less, maybe like 27-34.
It's going to be an awesome matchup. Top matchup of the weekend for sure. College football playoff berth on the line. First time in a 5-year stretch, Tyler, that Clemson is ranked lower than their opponent in the ACC Championship Game. Notre Dame number 2, Clemson number 3. Tyler, thanks so much for joining us this week. Best of luck the rest of the season with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when we come back from break, Aaron and I are going to dive into Conference Championship weekend and tell you what we think is going to happen this weekend on the field. So don't go anywhere. You're watching CampusLore Live.
All right, thanks for having me.
Welcome back into CampusLore Live. Huge thanks to Tyler Eifert for joining the program. I mean, it is the game of the weekend. It's a rematch of the game of the year. Number 2 Notre Dame taking on number 3 Clemson in the ACC Championship Game. Aaron, let's start there. It's Conference Championship weekend. Who'd have thought we would make it, especially with the amazing matchups that we have? This is a rematch. Trevor Lawrence didn't play in game 1. He's back. A lot of defensive starters are back. Seems like Clemson's pretty primed to get right in this game.
Yeah, and I think they're right now double-digit favorites heading into the ball game. But don't sleep on the Irish. I mean, they to me, they kind of got the monkey off their back. They beat an elite team. They had a tremendous game against Clemson. Huge win, and I just love the way they've been playing this season. I mean, go back to that North Carolina game too. This defense is one of the best defenses in the country. This is a very, very good Notre Dame team. I think this is going to be a great football game. Obviously, it helps to have Trevor Lawrence back, and Clemson has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And they kind of know, too, we must win this football game to get in. Where Notre Dame's in. But Clemson knows there's a sense of urgency. We must win this game or our season's over. We're not making it to the playoffs.
I'm going to roll with Clemson here. I think they get revenge, and it might be in a big way. The SEC Championship Game, it is Saturday night in Atlanta, Georgia. Number 1 Alabama is going to take on number 11 Florida, of course, coming off that horrible loss to LSU just a week ago. Florida ain't going to beat Alabama, and this one ain't going to be close.
No, I agree with you. Alabama right now is they're the best team in the country. I don't think many teams can hang with them right now. I don't know if any team in the country can hang with them, especially a Florida team that has struggled defensively. I think they're going to get blown out of the water. I think it's going to get ugly early. I think Mac Jones and Najee and Devontae Smith, they could put up 50-plus points. I see Alabama win this game by double digits easy.
The one game, Aaron, that I think is going to have the most change, the most impact to the college football playoff is the Big Ten Championship. Ohio State getting an opportunity, of course, ranked number 4 right now, to take on number 14 Northwestern. Can Pat Fitzgerald's Northwestern defense slow down Ohio State and make this game interesting?
If Justin Field comes out hot, if he starts running the ball and creative with his legs and is able to get some one-on-one matchups on the outside with Olave, they're going to run right through Northwestern. I just don't see Northwestern having enough firepower offensively to score a ton of points versus Ohio State defense. So, like I said, you better create some turnovers and you better be able to run the football if you want to make this a close one. But I like Ohio State in this ball game.
Yeah, I just can't see Northwestern hanging with those guys for 4 quarters and putting enough points on the board to run with the Buckeyes. It's going to be an awesome weekend of college football. Next week, we will know who's playing in the college football playoffs. So enjoy this conference championship weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Aaron, I'm Drew. We appreciate you watching CampusLore Live.